Welcome to another exciting session, my grade 6 boys and girls. It's time for us to work on improving our reading skills and our listening skills, if you remember what I told you before. Now, as we focus on stories from our text, we are going to look closer at punctuations that are used within those reading texts to help us read more fluently. Now, always remember, today's readers will become tomorrow's leaders. Now, I am sure that you were ready for this lesson. So, if you do remember, in our last lesson, we read a story then and now. In this session, we are going to be using the same story. Are you ready for it? While you are reading with us, do remember, pause briefly where there is a comma, stop and take a breath at a full stop, high pitch for statements of exclamation and surprise, and lower your tone for the question mark. And remember, those are just a few guidelines for you to follow so that you will have smooth, meaningful reading exercise. Now, let's get started. Uncle Sonny and Uncle Johnny were neighbors who lived in the same village for more than 70 years. They did lots of things together. They farmed, fished, cut wood, and attended to other activities. Some moonlight nights, the children of the village sat on the steps to hear Uncle Sonny and Uncle Johnny tell old-time stories. They talked about village life long ago. Here is a part of a conversation between Uncle Sonny and Uncle Johnny one moonlight night.
Sonny, do you remember what happened in this village many years ago? We never locked our doors or even shut our windows at night.
Those were good old days. Very few persons stole from the neighbors. We respected each other very much.
I remember that I could scold any child of the neighborhood. The child was never rude to me, and his parents were never annoyed. They encouraged older people to supervise their children.
Most parents become annoyed when their children are scolded by other persons these days.
Do you remember the incident with Mr. David that day when we were children? We were returning home from school when someone said that Mr. David had gone to a village meeting. We all decided to raid Mr. David's fruit trees. There were many fruit trees in Mr. David's yard. At that time, the guinea trees were laden with large, ripe guineps. There were guineps even on the ground under the trees.
We were having a good time in the trees, picking and eating the guineps and joking with each other. Mr. David came back suddenly and caught all of us in the trees. We were afraid he would flog us, so we sat in the trees for hours.
Mr. Gentle, another neighbor, was passing and was told what had happened to us. He begged Mr. David to give us a chance, then took us home to our parents. Our parents thanked Mr. Gentle, made us apologize to Mr. David, and scolded us about stealing. Well, children, we lived together as neighbors. We lived in peace and love.
Wow, well, that was quite a story. I sure hope that you enjoyed listening to Uncle Sonny and Uncle Johnny tell you their story about long ago. Now, how did you feel while you were listening to that story? I'm sure that you were excited. Now, let's look at some of the sentences from the passage, and we'll identify the punctuation marks that were used in those sentences. At this time, make sure you grab a pencil and a book so that you could take note of the punctuations and practice them in your own sentences. Our first sentence. Uncle Sonny and Uncle Johnny were neighbors who lived in the village for more than 70 years. What kind of sentence do you think this is? Yes, it is a declarative sentence. In a declarative sentence, what punctuation do we use? Very good. We use a full stop to end such a sentence. Now remember that the full stop is used at the end of the statement. Now, what did we say that we should do when we see a full stop? Yes, stop and take a breath. Now that you know the punctuation mark that was used in that sentence, take 60 seconds and try to write a sentence of your own using that punctuation mark. Remember, the punctuation mark used is the full stop. I hope that you were finished with that. Now let's read my sentence. Mom made pastries for our snack yesterday. Mom made pastries for our snack yesterday. At the end of my sentence, there you see I have my full stop. Please make sure you read your sentence for someone at home and let them check to see that you would have used the correct punctuation mark. Our next sentence. They farmed, fished, cut wood, and attended to other activities. Look at the sentence carefully. I'll read again. They farmed, fished, cut wood, and attended to other activities. What punctuation mark comes after the words farm and fish? Very good. We see a comma. Now what do we do when we see a comma? We pause briefly. Remember, the comma is used to separate words, phrases, or ideas in order to prevent misreading the writer's intended meaning. Now that you can see this punctuation mark being used, Take another 60 seconds and try to write your own sentence using the comma. So here is my sentence that I wrote. John, Sheila, and Ravi are swimming in the muddy lake. John, Sheila, and Ravi are swimming in the muddy lake. There you see in my sentence, I use the comma to separate John and Sheila. When I read John, I briefly paused and then I said Sheila. Here is another sentence using another punctuation. Sonny, do you remember what happened in this village many years ago? Sonny, do you remember what happened in this village many years ago? Now, what punctuation are you seeing in this sentence? If you look carefully, at the end of this sentence, we see a question mark. Remember that we use a question mark when we are asking a question, or we use a question mark when writing interrogative sentences. Interrogative sentences ask a question. Also remember to lower your tone. Now it's your turn again. Take some time and write your own sentence using the question mark. I hope that you are having fun doing this activity, practicing how to write your own sentences using these punctuation marks that were used in our story that we read today. Here is my sentence. What will you be wearing at the ceremony tomorrow? What will you be wearing at the ceremony tomorrow? I am asking my friend or someone what they would be wearing. So I'm looking for a response this is considered a question. I therefore end that statement with a question mark. Now for our last sentence in this session. Those were good days. Those were good days. What punctuation mark does this sentence end with? Yes, you were absolutely correct. An exclamation mark. Remember that when we use an exclamation, we are showing some sort of emotion. And once you see that exclamation mark, you use a high pitch because it has some sort of surprise or emotion involved. Now that you know the exclamation mark, take 60 seconds and try to write your sentence using that punctuation. Please remember to follow the example. Okay, boys and girls, I'm sure that you would have written your sentence. Now listen to mine. Let's read. Fire, fire, shouted the old woman. Fire, fire, shouted the old woman. And there you have it. That was my sentence using the exclamation mark. Now, let's look back at the punctuation marks that we focused on today. Make sure that you write them down somewhere so that you could practice a little more on how to use them correctly. First, we had the full stop. Then, we had the comma. We also saw the use of the question mark and exclamation mark. But if you were paying attention, there is also one more important punctuation that you need to always remember to use. And it was all over in our story and everything almost that you read. That is the use of capital letters. Remember, capital letters are very important to note, and it is one of the most important punctuations that we can come across. You use capital letters to begin new sentences. You also use capital letters for the names of persons, the names of places. So if you were following the story, you would have seen that the names were written in capital letter. Uncle Sonny, Uncle Johnny, Mr. Gentle, Mr. David. All of those were written in capital letters. Well, that's all for our lesson today. Be sure to find the story in the Fun with Language Book 5 and read it over for yourself. Remember to share your sentences with someone at home or your teacher. This is all from me, your teacher, Ms. Shamshideen. Until next time, goodbye.